You think you're in control of your life. That's the first lie. Most people aren't living, they're repeating. You wake up and check your phone, not because you choose to, but because your nervous system demands it. You sabotage opportunities, not because you're afraid of failure, but because some part of you, buried deep in the subconscious, was trained to believe you don't deserve more. And that's the terrifying part. You are not choosing. You are running on patterns, running on programming, running on emotional blueprints etched into your psyche before you were even old enough to speak. What you call your personality might actually be a collection of emotional defaults, fear, guilt, shame, anger, embedded in your subconscious, playing on loop. And the worst part, you've mistaken those patterns for who you are. But you're not broken, you're conditioned. Most of your daily behavior isn't conscious decision making. It's reflex, it's memory. It's the subconscious doing what it's always done, keeping you in what's familiar, even if that familiarity is toxic, even if it's costing you your future. Think about that. You could be actively sabotaging your success because your subconscious believes success is unsafe. Why? Because once, when you were vulnerable, you were punished for standing out, or you were ignored when you asked for love, or praised only when you stayed small. And your subconscious remembers that. It doesn't respond to logic. It doesn't care about your dreams. It only cares about survival. It will keep you anxious if that's what it knows. It will keep you angry if that's what feels safe. It will replay every failure you've ever lived, not to hurt you, but because it doesn't know anything else. You see, the subconscious isn't evil. It's efficient. It doesn't ask, is this belief true? It asks, have we felt this before? And if the answer is yes, it will serve it again. So if you constantly feel like you're stuck, like no matter what you try, you always return to the same patterns. It's not because you're weak. It's because you're fighting a script that was written without your consent. And until you stop living in that unconscious loop, you're not building a life. You're running a simulation, one you didn't choose. Here's the truth no one told you. If you want to change your life, you don't start with the outside world. You start by rewriting the code that's been silently running the whole show. That code is your subconscious. It's not your enemy, but it will become your enemy if you don't wake up and take control. Because if you don't choose your beliefs, someone else already has. And if you don't claim your mind, the world will use it for you. So ask yourself, are you thinking or are you just remembering? That question might be your way out. There's a fundamental misunderstanding in how most people approach personal transformation. They believe that if they understand something, they've changed. But understanding is only the beginning. What changes you is repetition. You see, the subconscious mind isn't rational. It doesn't respond to logic. It doesn't analyze your intentions. It responds to what is repeated over time and with emotion. It's trained through exposure. And whatever you rehearse emotionally, whether good or bad, eventually becomes truth to your nervous system. So here's the dilemma. If you've spent years repeating self-doubt, scarcity, avoidance, and fear, that's what your subconscious recognizes as safe. Not because it's good for you, but because it's familiar, and the subconscious clings to familiarity. It uses it as a compass for survival. Now, people say things like, I want confidence, I want discipline, I want peace. But those desires are powerless if they're not reinforced repeatedly the same way their fears have been. Wanting is not enough. The mind doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you practice. This is why affirmations don't work for most people. They say something once or twice with no feeling and then wonder why their life doesn't change. It's like going to the gym once and expecting to become strong. The subconscious only absorbs repetition with emotional intensity. Without emotion, you're just making noise. But when emotion and repetition combine, now you're programming the machine. That's how your self-image was built in the first place. Think about it. You weren't born believing you were incapable or not enough, or that the world was out to get you. Those beliefs were installed, repeated, reinforced, not in one traumatic moment, but often in hundreds of subtle ones. The same sentence from a parent, the same rejection, the same silence when you needed connection, over and over until you believed, this must be who I am. So what does that mean practically? It means change isn't a lightning bolt. It's a process of deliberate repetition, not just repeating words, but repeating states of being, choosing the emotional state you want to normalize, practicing clarity, practicing calm, practicing strength, rehearsing the person you want to become until that version of you becomes more familiar than the broken one you've known. Neuroscience confirms this. The brain literally rewires itself through consistent thought and behavior. The neurons that fire together wire together. That's not motivational fluff. That's biology. Every time you think a thought and then emotionally engage with it, you are reinforcing a pathway. Repeat that pathway enough times and it becomes your default. So if you want to rebuild your mind, don't look for motivation. Look for rituals. Repeat what you want until it's who you are. Say it again and again, not because it sounds good, but because the repetition itself is the act of reconstruction. You're not trying to convince the world. You're trying to rewire yourself. Repetition is how habits form. Repetition is how beliefs solidify. And repetition is how the subconscious surrenders. But here's the part people avoid. You're already repeating something. Every single day, you're rehearsing a certain mindset, even if you're not aware of it. So the question isn't whether you're being programmed. The question is by who and for what. Because if you don't choose what to repeat, your past will choose it for you. And you'll keep becoming the very person you swore you'd grow out of. So start repeating the future, not the past. Let your repetition be your rebellion. If you want to understand where your life is heading, you don't need to look at your bank account, your schedule, or your social circle. You need to listen to how you speak to yourself when you're alone. Because the words you whisper in silence become the architecture of your destiny. We all carry an internal narrator, and it never stops talking. It comments on how we look, how we perform, what we're worth, what's possible, what's not. And most people never question it. They assume, well, it's in my head, so it must be true. But here's the reality. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between truth and repetition. It doesn't analyze what you're saying to yourself. It absorbs it passively, automatically. If you repeatedly say, I'm not good enough, or I always mess this up, or nothing ever works for me, you're rehearsing failure, not intentionally, but effectively. And you're building internal scaffolding that holds those beliefs in place, not because they're accurate, but because they've been repeated with emotion. That inner voice was shaped over time. Maybe it came from criticism. Maybe it came from neglect. Maybe you grew up in an environment where love was conditional and self-expression was unsafe. And now that voice plays on loop, warning you, limiting you, doubting you, pretending it's protecting you when really it's containing you. It's not that you lack potential. It's that your internal dialogue is telling you a story where you're powerless. And the longer you tell that story, the more convincing it becomes until your life bends to match it. The tragedy is that most people never separate themselves from that voice. They mistake it for identity. They say, well, this is just who I am. No, that's who practice being. You have to understand the subconscious takes its cues from repetition and emotion. And your inner voice, when soaked in shame or anxiety, becomes a powerful force of unconscious reinforcement. It's like feeding poison to the soil and wondering why the tree won't grow straight. And this doesn't mean you should lie to yourself either. It doesn't mean repeating hollow affirmations like I'm amazing when deep down you don't believe it. That kind of talk doesn't reach the subconscious because it lacks emotional resonance. It's not about pretending. It's about learning to speak to yourself in a way that is true but empowering, honest but hopeful, grounded but growth-oriented. Instead of I'm a failure, you say I failed, but I can learn. Instead of I'm broken, you say I'm healing. Instead of this is just who I am, you say this is who I've been, but not who I have to be. And when that kind of dialogue becomes habitual, when it's repeated with feeling, the subconscious starts to listen. It starts to shift. And so does everything else. Because here's the truth, your life will never rise above the story you keep telling yourself. Your relationships, your goals, your discipline, your faith, they all grow in the shadow of your inner voice. And if you don't rewire that voice, if you don't challenge the parts of it that were installed by pain, fear, or neglect, you will spend your life under a ceiling that you built. So the next time that voice says, you can't, don't just ignore it, challenge it. Ask who taught you to speak to me like that? And then start answering yourself in a new language, one that leads you forward, not back. Because your inner dialogue isn't just commentary, it's command. If you want to make a change that sticks, not for a day, not for a week, but for life, you need more than just information. You need emotion. Because emotion is the language of subconscious mind. Most people believe they can think their way into new life. They read the right books, watch the right videos, take notes. They understand the theory, but nothing changes. Why? Because understanding alone doesn't rewire your emotion does. You have to feel the change. You have to engage your nervous system. Because until your body feels it, your subconscious won't believe it. That's the critical distinction most people miss. Your subconscious was not programmed by logic. It was programmed by emotional moments. Moments that hit you so deeply, you never forgot them. Maybe it was the way your father looked at you when you failed. Maybe it was the rejection that broke your confidence. Maybe it was the applause that made you feel seen for the first time. Those moments went beyond words. They rewired you on a primal level. And that's the exact same level where real transformation happens. So if you want to change what you believe, if you want to break free from the emotional patterns that have been running your life for years, fear, guilt, insecurity, you have to go through emotion, not around it. You can't bypass the feeling. You have to face it. You have to bring it into the light and then anchor something new in its place. Let me explain it like this. Every belief you have is tied to a feeling. If you believe you're not worthy, it's not just a thought. It's a sensation in your body, a tightness in your chest, a heaviness in your gut. And if you don't disrupt that emotionally, you're just layering nice thoughts on top of a cracked foundation. But here's the good news. You can rewire it, and you don't need a decade of therapy. You need intensity, need presence. And you need to flood your system with the emotions that match the life you want. Gratitude, power, joy, conviction. Those are not just nice words. They are states. And states can be trained. You have to condition them, practice them, feel them until your nervous system says, this is home now. When you combine emotion with repetition, just like we talked about earlier, that's when the shift happens. You're not just trying anymore. You're becoming. You're not just hoping, you're anchoring new truth into your identity. And look, this isn't always pretty. Sometimes it means breaking down. Sometimes it means feeling the pain you've buried for years. But the pain you avoid is the prison you live in. You have to go there, not to suffer, but to reclaim your power. Because the moment you realize that you can generate the emotion you need, confidence, certainty, love, without waiting for the outside world to give it to you, that's the moment you start being a victim and you start being a creator. So here's the challenge. Stop living numb. Stop chasing surface level highs. Stop avoiding the discomfort that holds your breakthrough. Get emotional and get free. Because if you can change what you feel, you can change what you believe. And if you can change what you believe, you can change everything. So feel it deeply, fully, unapologetically. That's not weakness. That's the key to your subconscious. And that's where the real power begins. Here's a truth that most people overlook. Your brain does not know the difference between what is vividly imagined and what is real. Now, let that sink in for a second, because this changes everything. Your subconscious doesn't deal in facts. It deals in patterns, in emotion, repetition, imagery. That means when you visualize something with enough clarity and emotional charge, your brain responds as if it's actually happening. You're not just daydreaming, you're literally rewiring your neurology. Think about that. Every time you imagine yourself failing, every time you replay that moment of embarrassment, every time you picture the worst case scenario, you are rehearsing it. You are preparing your body, your emotions, your decisions to experience it again. But here's the other side of the coin, and it's the most empowering truth I could ever give you. You can also rehearse your future success. You can condition your mind and body to experience confidence before you ever step on the stage. You can train your emotions to respond with courage before you ever face the challenge. You can experience the feeling of victory before it ever arrives. And by doing so, you make it more real, more likely, and more aligned with your identity. Because identity is everything. And what you visualize consistently becomes who you believe you are. Champions, real champions, don't just train their bodies, they train their minds. They don't wait until game day to feel like winners. They've already seen it 1,000 times. They've felt it. They've lived it. By the time they walk into the arena, their nervous system already knows what to do. Why? Because they've rehearsed it in the mind. They've programmed the response. Now, you might say, that sounds great, but what if I don't believe it? Good. But that's where because belief doesn't come first. Rehearsal does. You don't wait until you believe you're confident. You visualize it daily until your system accepts it as your new normal. You don't wait until you feel ready. You create readiness by immersing yourself in the mental movie of the person you want to become. Visualization is the blueprint. It's how you start building a new version of you before it physically exists. It's the bridge between imagination and manifestation. And it works not because it's magical, but because it's mechanical. You're training your brain to see opportunities where it once saw fear. You're giving your body the experience of success over and over so that when it arrives, it feels familiar, natural, like home. But here's the mistake most people make. They visualize outcomes, not identity. They picture the money, the car, the applause. And that's fine, but that's not where transformation happens. If you want to create lasting change, you have to visualize the person you need to become. What does your posture look like? How do you speak? How do you breathe when you're calm under pressure? What decisions do you make when you're no longer ruled by fear? That's what you need to rehearse, because success isn't something you attract by luck. It's something you align with by identity. So every single day, give your subconscious the images it needs. Feed it the future. Let it feel what it's like to live free, focused, and unshakably certain. And remember this, if you don't choose the images your mind rehearses, the past will choose them for you. Start visualizing your greatness, not someday, but now. Because the mind you train will become the life you live. We live in a world that's addicted to noise. Notifications, headlines scrolling, talking, arguing, everyone's saying something, but almost no one's actually listening. And I don't mean listen, I mean listening to yourself. See, the subconscious mind doesn't shout. It whispers, it speaks in stillness. And the tragedy is most people have never been quiet long enough to hear it. You want clarity. You want purpose. You want to know who you really are. Then stop chasing answers from the outside and start listening to what's already inside you. Because here's the truth. Your subconscious has been speaking to your whole life, in your gut feelings, in your dreams, in those moments of peace when everything finally goes still. But we drown it out with distractions, with business, with avoidance, because silence is uncomfortable. And why? Because when the world gets quiet, the truth gets loud. And that's where the shift happens. Because until you face what's beneath the noise, the fear, the old wounds, the questions you've been too afraid to ask, you'll keep building your life on distraction, not direction. Now, I'm not talking about meditation like it's some luxury spa experience. I'm talking about strategic stillness, learning to sit with yourself even when it's uncomfortable and listen, not just to your thoughts, but to the spaces between them. That's where the real answers lie. You see, your subconscious holds every pattern you've ever rehearsed, every emotional memory, every piece of programming. And it doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes it shows up as resistance, as anxiety, as that gut feeling you ignored one too many times. But if you give it space, just 10, 15 minutes of intentional stillness, it begins to reveal what you've buried. And when you finally hear that voice, the one behind all the noise, you realize something powerful. You've known the truth all along. You've known what needs to go. You've known what you're meant to do. You've known who you could become if you stopped running. Stillness isn't passive. It's not weakness. It's the most radical act of power in a distracted world. Because when you stop reacting and start observing, you move from being controlled to taking control. You shift from survival to strategy. And yes, it takes discipline. At first, the silence will feel like pressure, but then it becomes presence. And that presence, that awareness is where transformation begins. Because once you've heard your own truth, you stop chasing everyone else's. That's when your decisions get cleaner. Your mind gets sharper. And your path, the one that's actually yours, begins to unfold in front of you. You don't need another motivational video. You need to get quiet enough to hear your own wisdom. So here's what I'll leave you with. Stop filling every silent moment with noise. Stop mistaking business for progress. Because in the stillness, in the breath, in the calm, that's where your real power is waiting. The world will keep shouting, but your future depends on whether you can hear the whisper underneath it. Be still. Listen, and let that silence lead you to who you really are. If this message moves something in you, don't just scroll on. Take a deep breath, let it land. And if you're ready to keep growing, to keep rising, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs it. Your journey is just beginning. Let's walk it together.